Hello and welcome to the artifact How to Cultivate Information Literacy in Rural Environments. My name is Gideon and I would like to introduce you to that topic. Information literacy has become a significant term in the last few years. Even for residents from urban areas, it's a big step to gain information literacy. So how could we cultivate information literacy in environments who live under certain conditions like rural areas? This artifact is a collaboration between German and Indian students and contains interesting aspects and insights from different sources. Besides scientific perspectives, which will be presented by Selma and Amiya, it also includes results from intercultural perspectives gained by interviews from Indian and German residents. Srishti and Tanisha are taking over that part. In the end, it will be me again presenting approaches on how the situation could be improved. But let's start with the motivation first. There are a lot of techniques and methods to cultivate information literacy, but improving the situation in rural areas is a big challenge because there's a difference between rural and urban areas inside a country, but also between countries. So it's useful to understand why there are discrepancies. Getting answers and solutions on the topic is the main motivation because there shouldn't be barriers to gain information literacy. Information literacy is the set of integrated abilities encompassing the reflective discovery of information, the understanding of how information is produced and valued, and the use of information in creating new knowledge and participating ethically in communities of learning. The following audio from Osama Mansa, the founder of the Digital Empowerment Foundation, gives us some insights from the situation in India and how it could be improved.
Most of India was poor or is poor. We are not poor because of anything else, but because information doesn't flow properly and information doesn't go to the poorest of the poor. And they don't know how to use information. They don't know how to use for their benefit, for their right, for their entitlement, for everything. Most of the government entitlements and information has gone to the internet and web. How do they access if the digital infrastructure is not available locally? The point is that there are still huge number of people who are actually excluded from digital infrastructure, which is extremely important for it to happen because these days nothing happens without digital intervention. Whether it's a financial access or it's access to entitlement or access to citizen services or access to government services or access to private services or access to educational services, examination form, admission form, class form, all those processes have gone online. How do you avail it without having an online infrastructure available to you?
As it already mentioned in the slide before, in 2000, 70% of India was rural, 50% is functionally and 80 to 90% is digitally illiterate. 20% of Indian residents are physically and now also digitally disconnected. The majority had barely any means to access information that could empower them to avail themselves of rights, entitlements, and opportunities. They have no access to timely and relevant information. Today, everything is about information. An interesting quote from Mansa placed in the interview is the following: "If I am not getting my ration, my food which government says I am entitled to, it is not about the food, it's about the information."
Like Gideon has already mentioned that about 70% of India is rural, Trading Economics classifies 65.53% of India's population as rural. When talking about Germany, on the other hand, the global economy states that 22.62% of the population in Germany is classified as rural. A paper written by Hodge is dealing with the term digital divide and emphasizes that people with certain demographic and socioeconomic characteristics might be socially excluded from the urban areas, like for example older people who are not able to participate in the online service systems. Older people struggle more in being able to deal with information efficiently because of a variety of reasons. For example, fear of not being able to adapt to fast-changing technologies and the need to learn and relearn skills. Another target group that might be socially and digitally excluded are children who do not have access to laptops and computers. According to the studies, every seventh child in Germany is victimized to poverty. About 15% of such families do not have access to laptops or computers. Lack of access to sources might lead to the fact that regional development becomes constrained and regional disparities further increase. Additionally, the following study deals with the developing information literacy skills among rural area college students and is written by Vyakshmi et al. This paper intends to explore the information literacy skills of the students at rural area college and to find out the factors which have impact on these skills. To assess students' information literacy level, questionnaire method has been used to collect the data. It were around 175 questionnaires. After collecting the data have been analyzed with the descriptive analysis method. Information literacy skills of the students have been analyzed by their information search and retrieve ability using email, subject email forum, document sharing, downloading, and open access resources. Considering the results, Figure 1 shows that about 48% of the students are not aware of search techniques. Nevertheless, the second figure shows that about 45% of the students knew what the meaning of email is. Moreover, about 92% are not aware of attaching the documents in the email. 71% are not aware of sharing the documents at all. About 30% knows how to download certain documents, and more than 80% is not aware of open access resources. All in all, the results show that downloading using email is more familiar to them, whereas searching information, document sharing, subject email forum, and open access resources are not familiar to them. The study shows the urgent need for teaching information literacy skills in order to support students with search techniques and evaluating the certain information.
From our resources, we learn that information illiteracy prevails on a large scale in different sectors, like the education sector. The internet has almost become an inseparable part of people's lives, and the education sector being no exception. Unfortunately, due to reasons like lack of proper infrastructure, students in rural areas to this date learn from books which may contain limited amount of information. Using the internet will not only increase the amount of information available, but also make students literate in terms of dealing with information, as the sources could be verified and therefore credibility is not questionable. Here is an anecdotal experience of a student who was deprived of learning through a laptop during the pandemic, which created a lot of difficulties in the learning process. Bhanu Pratap is a student in New Delhi and is excited to be given a free laptop from an NGO. In his quote, he expresses his disappointment about the fact that 40% of the students do not have access to mobiles or laptops. Upon being the lucky one to receive a laptop, he is now in a much better position. While referring to information literacy, we often forget about the most dangerous field, which, if not dealt with due care, can potentially turn devastating: cybersecurity. People from rural areas are not well versed with cybersecurity and often fall prey to the atrocities of cybercrimes like embezzlement, data leaks, cyberbullying, etc. In the following video, we get to see what technology giants like Microsoft are doing to bridge the education gaps in rural communities. Talking about the health and medicine sector, the resources reveal that there is a below average literacy with respect to health and medicine among people from rural areas. They only blindly follow the instructions of a doctor without any research of their own. As regards the farming sector, agriculture forms a significant part of the country's development, and the current scenario dictates farmers using archaic techniques of farming. Innovation needs to be introduced in the farming sector through new technologies. Since the people from rural areas highly depend on visiting libraries to obtain knowledge and information, it becomes imperative for such libraries to provide a wide range of books, research papers, dissertations, etc. One of the resources talked about how an educated librarian can positively impact information literacy among people who visit such libraries. A survey was conducted to ascertain the quality and use of information literacy made by people in villages. The results reveal the following data. Around 68 respondents stated that they agreed on using the information to solve the problem. Around 63 respondents stated that they agreed on using all of the information that they found. Around 89 respondents stated that they agreed on using a brand new information or a known one. Around 71 respondents stated that they agreed on doing an interpretation on information that they used. Ranjit Singh Desale from Solapur, Maharashtra, was a primary school teacher in 2009. He observed that most of the students in his school hailed from tribal communities where education was not taken seriously, and books were not in local languages, which affected the learning outcomes of students. He redesigned books to include QR codes that contain video lectures, stories, assignments, audio poems for better understanding. He believes that teachers are the real change makers and play a significant role in shaping a person's life. As a result of his effort, the attendance of girl children in his school recorded 100%. With his prize money, he hopes to start an initiative that would recruit 5,000 students from war-torn areas to Peace Army.
We will now look at how we investigated, what methods were used, some special aspects demographical and economical for both the countries India and Germany, some astounding results and conclusions, and how information literacy could rightfully be implemented in the rural areas of both the countries. So our methods of investigation included interviews from people of rural areas itself, various experiments, several case studies, different surveys, and quantitative methods of obtaining data. For both the countries, we used similar approaches for investigation. The interviews and the comparison between the conditions in rural areas of both India and Germany helped us understand everything with a better perspective and draw some amazing conclusions. We as a group interviewed people who were within our reach and who could give us a clear picture of their conditions in rural environments and their struggles to obtain information literacy or even basic education for that matter. In India, we interviewed a female housekeeper who came from a small village called Bhatkal. A chauffeur was interviewed as well. He gave an extremely insightful brief about his take on information literacy in rural areas. In Germany, a young adult born and raised in rural area was interviewed, and two experts who with their expertise in this field gave us a better perspective. While we were interviewing our respective candidates, we made sure to ask them some critical questions to have better understanding of their conditions. Our questions included important themes like the lack of infrastructure and technology in rural areas when compared to urban areas, how underprivileged groups understand the concept of information literacy and how do they define it? What could be done to overcome the evident gap that is ever growing between the quality of life in rural areas and urban areas? What is their take on launching new technology and programs for better reach? We managed to ask them informative details on how and when should we start teaching information literacy, whether or not they are keen on learning about information technology, what difficulties they face while dealing with technology, how important is information literacy for them, and so on.
On the basis of demography, following conclusion came from both Indian and German side. Let's talk about Indian side at first. People of rural area are unskilled, naive, and completely secluded from the city. They still rely on traditional method as illiterate people might not comfortable in learning or accepting something new. There is also a huge difference of digital gap between rural and urban. They are more reluctant to accept something new. Now coming to the German side, people of rural area are more connected than urban people. There is not a clear demarcation of rural and urban. Business are unwilling to invest in rural areas owing to greater transportation costs. On the basis of economic background or rate of literacy, following conclusion came from both Indian and German side. Coming to the Indian side at first, there is not an equal distribution of internet. Only 25% of population use internet as a source of information. As most people come from poor background, they cannot afford gadget which supports internet. Dependency on internet is restricted and limited to basic need only. Now coming to the German side, internet seems to be accessible to all as education is the topmost priority, which results in highest rate of literacy. More literacy means people are more educated and advanced and more financially independent they are, so they can afford everything and such gadgets which supports internet. From the interviews, following result came from both Indian and German side that why there is an immediate need of information literacy. This result part basically talks about how to implement information literacy in our day-to-day life and why it is important for all of us. People need to know how to deal with information and how to use information. Institution should start educating children how to use media properly. Institute should start early educating children how to perceive information. By this, information literacy will grow faster and earlier. People would be more upgraded by using new form of technology and can implement in their day-to-day life. To equalize difference, technology should be widespread and affordable for all strata of society. For sustaining life of rural area, there is a dire need of information literacy according to different age group for adult and children as well. Teaching information literacy would develop the social structure of rural areas, resulting lowering the crime rate. People would be more alert, also encouraging cashless transaction and pro and cons of cybercrime and online fraudulence.
On the following slides, I will present you our conclusions on how to improve the situation. There should be an improvement on the infrastructure first. Village libraries and the competence and capacity of librarians should be also improved by gaining new knowledge and skills. Because of the importance of new technology, it is necessary to introduce lessons in ICT. People should know how to evaluate information. Applications should be made simpler for elder residents. Introductions of workshops in rural areas and information feeds on social media should be made to improve information literacy. In the world we are living right now, nothing happens without the internet. For example, when you want to apply for a new job, you need access to the internet. Any registrations made online. So we need to build digital resource centers in rural areas, including tablets, laptops, printer scanners, power backups, and wireless broadband connectivity managed by experts. We need to give digital literacy support, digital services, information services, citizen services, and business development services. Illiterates can't read or write, but they can use audiovisual tools to gain information literacy. They can record the voice and video to also spread their useful information to everybody. Those resource centers won't distinguish between gender, and also would be a safe space for women and children. The following video is showing solutions the government could implement to improve the situation.
Recommendations that we would make are mostly policy related recommendations, that governments should make an enabling environment for people to be able to invest in those rural and remote areas. Usually without incentives, you find that the operators will just not go there. Another method would be to make sure that universal access funds are also putting up infrastructure which can be shared by various operators to make the burden lighter for them. And that way, at least the remote areas can be connected. There are policy steps that governments can take and regulators. One could be to use tax incentives, maybe give them tax breaks so that the investment is not too heavy on them. Another one would be to, when they give spectrum to the operators, they should put conditions that make it attractive for the operators to move into the rural and remote areas. So there are a number of policies that can be used, and also just to open their minds and license different types of technologies in the rural areas.
Maybe there could also be a way to create an educational channel or launch beneficial offers by government-based programs in place that promote information literacy. Right now, news about the global pandemic is spread everywhere in the world, even in rural areas. So shouldn't it be possible to spread every other information as well? As you could see, there are a lot of approaches to improve the situation, but we definitely need to do something. Here are the sources that have been used for this artifact. We thank you for your attention. Goodbye.